Why is it that spiritually abusive people and institutions rarely ever seem to be held accountable? My name is Dr. Felucia, and I'm a licensed psychologist, owner of Skill Set Counseling, where I focus on the treatment of spiritual abuse. And in this video, I'm going to be discussing what is a very angering, sobering, sad realization that a lot of people who have been through spiritual abuse experience. And that is why spiritually abusive people and institutions rarely ever seem to be held accountable for what they do. Um, so to find out, keep watching. So the main reason why I believe this happens is how spiritually abusive institutions are set up. And so, if you haven't already, I would really encourage you to watch a lot of the videos that I have on my channel about spiritual abuse. But in spiritually abusive settings, there are certain rules and certain values that are strongly held. One of those things is appearance over authenticity. And so, spiritually abusive people and institutions are very vested in maintaining a specific image. And in that image, they want to look, flawless. They want to really minimize the amount of harm that has been done to other people. And so, when you have a system that operates that way, there are going to be certain things that happen. And one of those things that happens is that when problems, grievances, violations have been brought up, they're dismissed very quickly. They're dealt with in a way that's very dismissive. And so, you can tell from watching a lot of my videos how the language that spiritually abusive people institutions use. They do a lot of what I call the spiritual bypass, where they will take things that have happened that are unfair, violations of justice, violations of boundaries, different things, and use spirituality as a way to throw the blanket over it and just say, oh, well, all things happen for a reason. We have to give people grace, all these things. And they sound true to a degree. There's always a little bit of truth in what abusive people will say to control other people. And so that can be really challenging for people on the receiving end, because they'll be like, oh, yeah, that is true to a degree. We do have to give people grace, etc. But at the same time, here's something really horrible that happened. And so, to really understand why justice and accountability don't happen, I want you to think about like a bridge. And there's one thing on one side of the bridge and one thing on the other side of the bridge. And on one side of the bridge, I want you to imagine spiritually abusive people and spiritually abusive institutions. And then on the other side of that, I want you to imagine like institutions and vehicles of accountability and justice. So that could be, a justice system, the justice system, the legal system, different sorts of authorities, people, even people's voices, things like that. So if you think about the institution on one hand and vehicles of justice on the other hand, spiritually abusive people, what they do is that the way the system operates and the way that these people act is that that bridge between both things is pretty much destroyed. And the way they do this is they will first of all have this idea, this very strongly held dynamic of us versus them. If you haven't watched this video, I'd encourage you to watch it. It's called the us versus them dynamic when it comes to spiritual abuse. And so for those of you who have experienced spiritual abuse, I'm sure that many of you, and I've been told this professionally and also from people sharing their personal experiences, that there's always this us versus them mindset. And so it's, we are good, we are safe, we can be trusted. They are bad, they are out to get us. They don't like us. And so what that does is that anytime you hear anything that talks about justice, says that people should be held accountable for their actions, things like that, people, spiritually abusive systems and people will say, well, that's what they think. And they're dangerous and they're sinful. And so we don't ascribe to their philosophies. And so people, who have been spiritually abused will be, so many of them have been told they can't read certain things. Whatever they read has to come from that institution. Some of these institutions have their own publishing companies, educational systems, things like that, even networks of professionals that you can see. And so, like I said, that vehicle to justice, that bridge to justice is burned. Because think about it, if someone is in that situation where they have experienced abuse and they've been violated or harmed, their mechanism of going to seek help, or the people that they would seek help from, or even read about certain things. Oh, is this wrong? Is this a thing I should have gone through? It's all controlled by that environment. Okay, so that's one way in which that happens. Another way in which that happens is through isolation. And so many times when people have been in spiritually abusive situations, they're very isolated from everyone else. Again, this links somewhat to the us versus them philosophy. And so people who are growing up in these institutions and are around these types of people will be told, well, you can only talk to people that are part of this institution or religious group or whatever it is, spiritual community. People just are very isolated. And so the things that would help one get justice and get accountability are very hard to come by. And on top of that, spiritually abusive people and institutions always use a lot of fear to control people. And so I've heard just awful stories of people that, they've been abused. They're going to go get justice. They're like, I'm going to file this lawsuit. I'm going to call the police, whatever. And they are told, if you do this, this is what's going to happen to you. There's either fear of being shunned, or they'll say, well, you're going to get judgment upon yourself because you're not a perfect person either. Or there are lots of threats. There could be things like, threatening people's finances and livelihood. For a lot of people who have been through situations like this, their ties to the spiritually abusive environment can be very pervasive. So that may be the place where they are employed. That may be their only source of finances or other very important resources. And so by them trying to go and get justice or hold people accountable, there's a lot at risk. And so I say all this because I know that sometimes when people have been through experiences like this and they see that spiritually abusive systems and people are rarely ever held accountable, and there isn't justice, or maybe if there is, it is so delayed, it can be very disheartening. You can feel anger, you can feel shame, you can just feel this sense of helplessness, but it is all by design. These things just don't happen because it's not just a random event. The way these systems are set up and the way these people operate within these systems, they are obsessed with control and with having a certain image, and they will do whatever it takes to maintain that. And so I know that it can be very disheartening to be on the receiving end of that. And it's not, it's just one of those things that I can't go into all of this in this video, but there are ways that you as a spiritual abuse survivor can overcome this. Okay. So it's not a hopeless situation, but I'm doing this to help you understand that it is understandable why these things happen. It doesn't make them right by any stretch of the imagination. So anyway, I would love to hear from you all in the comments. Why do you think that spiritually abusive people are rarely ever held accountable for what they do, or seem not to face justice or face the justice that they should? I'd love to hear from you in the comments. And if you have any questions or you'd like to book a free consultation, you can go to my website, skillsetcounseling.com, and click on the orange button. All right. May you have a wonderful day that is filled with peace. Bye-bye.